So welcome back to this new module. So in this module, we are going to build a form validation project. So this will be the final version of the application that we are going to build in this entire module. So it is actually a simple create account form in which we have 4 input fields, and then you can see here whenever I hover over these particular input fields, this particular one has some bounce animation is going on, and also we have a hover animation to this particular button, which is actually a hover effect. So this will be the project that we're going to build in this module. So this particular project has some basic validation to these 4 input types. You can see we have this placeholder text. If we enter the data, like we have some email IDs, okay, and if I enter a password which is like will be a random one, and then whatever password we will type, we can actually add it here also. And if I click on submit, you can see password doesn't match. If I enter here a password properly, so we have these particular validations. Now you can see everything is actually properly set up. You can add an alert box if you want, but I'm just going to teach you how to create this basic form in this entire module. Now if you leave any of the fields empty, means all the fields empty, and if I click on submit, then you can see we get these error code like email cannot be empty, password cannot be empty, password check cannot be empty, and username cannot be empty. So these will be the validations that we're going to apply, and also you can see they still have the bounce animation to these input fields with that particular error message. So we will learn how to create this entire project in this module, and this is just a basic version of the form. I have not added a complex validations to this project because I have not connected this project to the backend. Okay, so in the next part, we are going to start with the HTML part of the project. So now it's time to start with the HTML part of the project, which is our form validation project. So for that, I have already created the file inside the Visual Studio Code, and I have also launched the project inside my browser. So you can see here, this is the version of the application that we want to develop, which is form validation project, and this is the final version of the application that we want to develop. Okay, so the first thing is we need to actually create a container. Instead of that, we need to place all the other elements. So coming back to the other version of the application, and instead of the index.html, first we need to create the container. So here I will be specifying the container, and then inside of the container, I need to place a header. And inside of that, I'm going to specify the h1 element, which is actually used for the header of the form. Create account. If I control save it, now you can see the create account heading is now visible to the browser. So after the header, we need to create a form. So here we need to use the form tag. Then I don't need any action to this particular form. Here we need to specify the ID, which is going to be form, and then we need to define the class, which is also going to be form. Inside of the form, we need to create a class that is actually a control form. Control form, and if I press the tab key, it will automatically complete the code for us. Now we get the division tag with the class name control form. Inside of that, first we need to create the label, which we'll use to display this particular one. Then we need an input type, and then the third thing that we need is actually a small tag for displaying the error. So coming back to the other version of the application, and instead of the index.html, first we need to here specify the label tag. So label, and here we need to add the user name, and here we need to display the text that is user name, and then we need to define the input type. So input, and the type is going to be text, and then we need to specify the placeholder, which is going to be like vj, and then here we need to add the id, which is going to be user name, and then we need to add the small tag, and the content that we want to add inside this particular small tag will be displayed by using the JavaScript code dynamically. So here we need to specify the class. Instead of that, we need to add the error. If I control save it, now you can see we get the input type, which is like this one, having a text attribute with the placeholder text vj, and then we also get the label. Similarly, I'm going to copy this code once more, and then I'm going to paste it here. So now we need a second field that is for the email. So here I'm going to change the value to email, and then the username is going to be changed to email, and then we need to define the input type to email as well, and then we need to define the placeholder text, which is going to be like qrp @abc.com, and then the id is going to be like email as well. Okay, and the class is going to be error. Then again I'm going to copy the code and paste it one more time, control form. Then the label is going to be like password, and here we need to add the password again. Then the type we need to define here password, and the placeholder text is also going to be password. And then we need to change the id, which is going to be password. Okay, and then again I'm going to copy this code and paste it one more time. Then password, this is going to be check, and then this is going to be check. Then we need a type, which is going to be check. Now input type is going to be like password because it will remain same. Only we need to change the id and the message and the placeholder text, which is going to be password check. If I control save it, now we also get the fourth input field, which is for the password checking purpose. The last element that we want inside our form is the submit button. So here, after the end of the division, we need to here specify the button tag. The text that we want to display inside the button is going to be submit, and then we need to define the type of this particular button, which is going to be submit. If I control save it, now you can see all the elements is now added inside the project, which is for the creation of the account form. So in the next part, we are going to start with the CSS part of this particular project, which is our form validation project. So now it's time to start with the CSS part of the project. But before moving forward, I want to fix a one problem inside this control form fourth element, which is for the password check. So here I have actually named the same ID to these two elements. So here this one is for the password check. So I need to change the ID name to password check. If I control save it, then everything will be fine. Now we can start the CSS part of this project. So first I'm going to here select the universal selector. So universal selector, and instead of that, first I'm going to set the box sizing to border box. Okay, if I control save it, now you can see the default styling of the browser is changed. Then I'm going to reset the margin to 0 and also padding to 0. I can see everything is now reset. Okay, and after that I'm going to select the body element. Inside of the body element, first I need to specify the background, and here I will be using the linear gradient function. Then I want a to right, and then I need to define the color. So it is like FFA6B7, the first color, and the second color that we want is actually 1E6FAF. If I control save it, now you can see we get this particular gradient color to our project. After that, we need to apply the font family. So font family, not font, it is going to be like font family. So I need to here apply the sans serif. So now you can see the font family is changed. Then I need to set the display. So here display is going to be flex, and then justify content. That is, this one is also going to be like center. Then we need to define the align items is going to be center. Control save it. Now you can see it's actually shifted to the center of the browser. Then I'm going to specify the minimum height. That is this one, which is going to like 100 VH. Control save it. Now you can see the content is actually shifted to the center of the screen. Okay, so that marks the completion of the code for the body element. Now it's time to specify the code for the container. Okay, now inside of the container, first I need to specify the background. So background, here I will be again using the linear gradient function. Then I need to apply the linear gradient to bottom. Okay, and then I need to provide the color. So the first color is going to be pure white. Okay, and then I need to define the second color for the linear gradient, which is going to be F4, F7, F9. If I control save it, now you can see the color is applied to the container. Then I need to define the border radius to this particular container. which is going to be 5 pixel for the rounded corners. And after that, I want to define the box shadow. So this is going to be like our box shadow, 0 pixel. Then we need to add here 2 pixel and then the 5 pixel. And after that, we need to add the RGBA functions, which is going to 0, 0, and then the alpha value is going to be 0.3. If I control save it, now you can see the box shadow is applied to the container. So after applying the box shadow property, it's time to apply the width property. So width is going to like 400 pixel. If I control save it, now you can see the width of the container is changed. So the next thing is we want to apply the CSS style to this particular header. So for that, we need to here select the header class. So header, and then to start its block of the code. Inside of the header, first we need to change the border bottom, because if you see the final version of the application, that is this one, you will see there is a border. So for that, we need to here use the border bottom property, and then here need to add the 1 pixel solid border, and the color of the border is going to be like F0, F0, F0. So control save it, then you can see there is a very light border is applied to this particular header. And then we need to add the background color. So background color is going to be like hash symbol, then we have F7, F7 and F7. If I control save it, now you can see the border color. If I have made any typo to the header, because the thing size is not reflected back, I think the class is actually header and header, so the things are applied. You can see, yes, there is a slight change because it's almost the same color, but there is actually a color is applied. If I zoom in, okay, and after the background color property, we need to add the padding. So padding is going to be like 20 pixel. Then we need to add here 40 pixel. If I control save it, now you can see the padding is changed for this particular header. Then we need to add one more thing here inside the header. Then to select the h1 element, and then we need to here specify the margin to 0. Okay, and after that we need to select the form element, because we need to apply the code for the form. So here we need to add the padding. So padding is going to be like 30 pixel from top and bottom, and then from left and right it is going to be 40 pixel. If I control save it, now you can see the padding inside the form is changed. Next thing is we need to apply the code for these control form elements. So for that, here we need to select the control form class. So first here we need to add the control, then hyphen, then this is going to be form. Instead of that, first we need to set the margin bottom to 10 pixel, and then we need to set the padding bottom to 20 pixel, and after that we need to set the position, which is going to be relative. Okay, and then we need to add the transition, which is going to be all, and then we need to add the 0.3s, and then we need to add here ease. If I control save it, now you can see the margin bottom and the padding bottom is applied to the control form elements, and it will be applied to each of them, which is actually all 4 of them, because the class is similar for each of these 4 elements. Alright, the next thing is we need to apply a hover effect to this control form class. So for that, here we need to again type the control form, then we need to select the hover class, which is the pseudo element, and then here we need to call the transform. Again we need to here use the translate y, because we want to translate it y-axis, so it is going to be 5 pixel. Control save it, and if I now hover over it, then you can see it's actually having this transform animation, which is actually looks like a bounce effect. Okay, after that we need to add the code so that we can modify these labels of these particular form elements. So here again I need to use the control, so this is going to be control form, and then we need to select the label. So what we are actually doing with this particular line of the code, we are actually targeting this particular element under the control form. Okay, so we need to start its block of the code, and inside of that we need to change the display to inline block. Inline block, if I save it, then you can see its display changes to inline block, and then we need to add the margin bottom is going to be 5 pixel. If I save it, then you can see the margin is actually changed to all of them. After that, we need to again here use the control form, that is this one, and then we need to select at this point of time input. Then to start its block of the code, instead of that, we need to use the border property. So border is going to like 2 pixel, then solid border, and then we need to apply the F7, F7 and F7. If I control save it, now you can see the border is applied to this particular input fields. After that, we need to add the border radius, which is going to be 4 pixel. And then to set the display, so display is going to be block. If I control save it, now you can see everything is actually aligned one after the another under this particular control form input division. Okay, and then I need to use the font family. So here I will be using the font family like sans serif. Control save it. Okay, and then here I need to change the font size. So font size is going to be like 14 pixel. And then we need to add the padding. So padding is going to be like 10 pixel. And after that I will be applying here a width property. So width is going to be like 100%. If I control save it, now you can see the form element input type is actually changed. And the last property that we want to apply to this particular form inputs is actually a transition property. So transition, and here we need to add the border. So it is like border color. So we want to apply the property to the border color, which is going to be like 0.3 s, and it is going to be like ease. If I control save it, so now you can see there is a smooth transition between the border of the input types. Okay, so now we apply the code for the input type. Similarly, when there is an input focus, we want to apply some code. So here again we need to use the control form, and then we need to select the input, and then at this point of time we are going to focus. So it's going to focus. Then instead of that, we need to first set the outline to 0, and then we need to change the border color, that is this one, to a little bit black version, or I can say that very close to gray. So if it is focus, it's going to give us a little gray version of the border for the input. So here I have used the input, it is like input. Control save it. Now you can see we get the lighter version of the black. If I just simply remove this code, means comment out this code, then we get the dark borders to this particular input types. But we don't want it. We want a little lighter version of the black. So we are going to use this code. You can see there is a slight change in the color of the borders of the input. Okay, then for control form success, we need to create some different animations, because whenever the form is filled up completely, like if we have the content, if we have some password, if I submit it, then we can see we get this green indication border to all of these input types. To add that particular functionality, we need to write the CSS. Okay, so here we need to again use the dot, because we want to change the colors of the border of the input types. So again we need to use the control form. So control form, so we want to target it the input type. So here we need to use the success. So this is the class that will be added to the form elements dynamically by using the JavaScript. So it is going to be like control form dot success. Instead of that, we need to change the border color to the green version. So it is going to be like ECC71. If I control save it, right now you can't see the working of this particular CSS code, because this will be used by using the JavaScript. Okay, and similarly we need to write the CSS code for these small validations ones. If I refresh it and if I submit it, so this will be the small tag. So we need to write the CSS and change the color to red one. Alright, so for that again here we need to write the CSS. So coming to the other version of the application, so after that we need to here use the again control form. So control form, and then we need to target the small tag, which is a small, and instead of that first we need to change the color. So color is going to like E74, which is going to be 3C. E74, and I have actually forgot one, so it is like C here. So now we get the red color, okay, which indicating that there is something wrong. Then we need to add the position parameter. It is going to be like absolute, and then we need to add the bottom. which is going to be like 0, because we want to add the small tag at the bottom of the control form input division. So bottom is going to be 0, and from left it is also going to be 0. Left is also going to be 0, and after that we need to set the visibility to hidden. Okay, so if I enter something here like text, if I control save it, right now you can't see anything, but if I remove the visibility property from here, then you will see the code DDD. Okay, so I'm going to here type the visibility hidden, which will hide the small tag because we want to make it visible by using the JavaScript code. Again, I am repeating. Then after that, here we want to add the transition property. So we want to apply the transition to all, which is going to be 0.3 as is. Control save it. The transition is also not going to be display because the transition will be added only when we add the code by using the JavaScript. You can see this is how it's actually visible with some smooth transition. Then we need to add a code if there is anything wrong, like if there is any of the input field gets some wrong values, which is going to be the failure case. So here I need to add the fail. Now we need to set the code for the fail case. If there is anything fail, then we need to actually set the visibility to the CSS. So what we are going to do here, we need to set the visibility to actually visible, and then we need to set the opacity to actually 1, and also we need to translate y axis to 0. Control save it. You can see, so whenever there is any failure, then we want to apply this particular CSS. The next thing is, and the last thing is, we need to apply the code for this particular submit button. So here I'm going to select the form tag, and then we need to select the button because the code is actually presented inside the button. The first thing is we need to change the background color, which is going to be 0 ED2F7. And we see the color of the button is changed. Then we need to change the color of the border also. So border, and then here we need a 2 pixel border of solid, and the color is actually the same that I have specified to the background color. Control save it, or I can just simply change the color little bit lighter version so that we can see the border to the button. Then we need to add here a border radius property for the roundness, so it is going to be like 4 pixel. Then we need to add the color to the button, which is going to be like white color, and then we need to add the display, it's going to be like block, and then we need to add the font family, or I can just simply remove the font family because we have already applied the font family to the body. Here I can use the font size property, which is 16 pixel. So if I control save it, now you can see the changes is reflected back to the button. After that, we need to add the padding. So padding is going to be like 10 pixel. And then we need to add the margin top property, which is going to be like 20 pixel. And then we need to add the width property, which is going to be like 100%. And then we need to add the cursor, which is going to be pointer. And here I need to add the transition property, which is going to be like background color. And it's going to like 0.3 as it is going to like is. If I control save it, now you can see the button code is actually changed. Similarly, we need to add the hover effect to the button. So I'm going to copy this here and paste it across the block of the code. Then here we need to add the pseudo element, which is hover. And inside of that, we need to add the background color. The background color that we want to apply is the same, just we have applied to the form border. If I control save it, now you can see the color of the button is changing on the hover of the button. Okay, so that marks the completion of the code for the CSS part for this particular project. You can see it's almost looks like the same with the final version of the application. So the next part, we're going to start with the JavaScript part so that we can add some basic validation to this particular project. So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project. So for that, we need to use the script.js file. So inside of the script.js file, first we need to get the reference of all of these 4 input type and also the button. So for that, we need to here create some constants. So first constant is going to be the form constant. So this is going to be equal to, So it is not from, we need a form. So it is going to like document dot get element by id, and here instead of that, first we need to get the reference of the form. So we have specified the id to the form element as form. So here we need to specify the form, and after that we need to define the another const. So it is going to like user name is equal to document dot get element by id. Alright, and instead of that we need to specify the user name. Then we need to add the const, and it is going to like email document dot get element by id, and here we need to add the email. Alright, and similarly again we need to here create the another const, and this one is for password. Password is equal to document dot get element by id, and here instead of that we need to add the password. Okay, and then again we need to add the const. It is going to like password check is equal to document dot get element by id. So here we need to also provide the password check. Okay, so now we get the reference of all of the 4 input elements. Now we need to listen to the event listener of the form event on click of the button. So here we need to use the form dot not from, it's actually a, here I again make a typo, it is like form not from. So here it's like form dot add event listener, and then instead of that we want to listen to the submit event, and then we need to call the function which is going to be an anonymous function, and we need to actually start its block of the code. Alright, and one more thing that I want to fix inside our version of the application, you can see here is the border, there is a slight border is actually appearing at the header at the bottom, but in the other version of the application we didn't get the border. That is because here I have actually forgot to add the hash symbol. If I do that, then you can see the border, or you can actually change the color to little darker version so that you can see the border clearly. But I want to display a lighter border, so that is the one I will be using it for the project. Now coming back to the script.js, instead of that we need to first check for the inputs. So here we need to create a function which is actually check inputs. Alright, so we need to create this function also because it is a submit button. So we need to here use the e dot prevent default function. So we need to call this particular function. The working of this particular code I have explained in many of my previous projects as well. Okay, now we need to create this particular function which is check inputs. Okay, and instead of that, first we need to actually trim the values of all of these particular input types. Okay, so here again we need to create the const, and the first one is actually our username value, then it is going to like username dot value dot not trim x. Okay, it's actually removed, it is not like that. Username dot value dot and here I need to call the trim function, and again I need to create the const. This one is for the email value, it is going to be like our email dot value dot trim. Now I have actually used here trim function to all of these values. The reason for that using the trim function so that we can remove the spaces before and after the text. That is the reason I'm actually used here a trim function to these particular values. Then we have the password value, and again it is going to equal to password dot value dot trim function. And then the last, which is the fourth one, which is for the password check. then it is going to be also value, then password check dot value, then it is going to be like trim. So now we trim the values. It's time to add the validation. So the first validation is for this particular username one. So it is going to like if the username, so we are going to start the block of the code. If the username is actually equals to empty one, then we need to call the set error function. That is set error for. So this will be the function we need to create. Now this particular function will accept an input, which is actually a username, and then a string, which is actually a message. User name cannot be empty. Okay, and then we need to create the else function. We need to start its body, and here we need to call this set success for, and this one is also going to accept an input, which is username. Now we need to create these two functions. So at the end of the check input function, we need to here create these two functions, which is actually set error and set success functions. So here we need to create the first set error function. So set error for, and this particular function is going to accept two parameters. The first one is the input, the second one is for the message. All right, and then here first we need to use the const, then the control form. Control form is going to equals to input type dot parent element. So what this parent element does, we actually targeting the parent element of the input type. So the parent of this particular input type is actually control form. So with the use of this particular property, we are actually targeting the control form. Okay, so coming back to the script.js again. So here after the end of this particular line of the code, we need to here create the reference of this small, because we want to display the error. So small is actually the element of the HTML in which we want to display the error, which is actually this type of error, which is actually our this tag. So we are targeting this particular tag here. So we need to here create the another const. Small is going to be equal to control form, that is this one, dot. So we need to use the query selector, and then we need to specify the type of the selector. So we want to select the error, which is actually the class name for this particular small tag, error, and after that we want to add a class list. So here again we need to use the control form dot class name, because we want to add a class name is going to be equal to and the name of the class. So if we come back to the CSS part, so for the error one, we have the control form fail class, that is this one. So if I copy this class name, copy it, and if I come back to the script.js, so here I'm going to paste the name of the class. All right, then we need to update the small inner text. Inner text is going to equal to message. All right, so this basically sets the error to the input fields if it is empty. So if I press the submit, nothing will be happen. So if I come back to here, we are actually calling these functions. So username, user value. So it is actually not called because here I made a one mistake. So we need to actually here use the username value, not user name. So we want to check it for the username value. If I did that, now if I press the submit button, you can see username cannot be empty. So the text is actually visible, but there is some problem with this CSS. So I have actually used here control form small, but it's actually behaving little weird. So we need to fix it. So right now I'm going to just leave it as it is because I want to add some code to all of these other input type also. I'm going to see it once I complete the code. Okay, so you can see it's working, but still it's giving some problem. But don't worry, we also need to complete the success part, and then I will see it later on how to fix this problem. Right now I'm going to refresh the code. So set error function will be used to all of the input types. Similarly, we need to create the set success for function. Okay, so here coming back to the script.js, and after the end of this set error function, here we need to again use the function keyword. Then this is for the set success for function. Now this particular function is only going to accept a single parameter, which is actually our input. Alright, so here I need to use the const, then the control, and this is going to be like form is equal to, and then it is also going to use the input dot parent element, and then here we need to use the control form again dot class name. So we need to add a class. So here we need to add the class name, which is actually for the success one. So that is this one. So I'm going to copy it and coming back to script.js, and I'm going to paste the class name here. Okay, and now if I don't require a dot here, also the dot is also not required here. I control save it, click it, now you can see everything is working fine. Username cannot be empty. So the error is solved by typing the code here. I immediately the things came into my mind that there is a dot is not required here. Okay, so the two functions is now gets completed. Now the next thing is we need to apply the validation code for the email one. So for the email one, we need to create a one more function, that is for the is email. So this is a function which we need to create. It's going to accept a email value, which is the value of the email input type, which is actually a text. So we need to here use the regex thing that actually I get it from the internet, because it is a very complicated thing and it will took a lot of time to get understand. So I have already copied the code from the internet. So this is actually for the email validation, which is a regex code to actually validate the email. So I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to click on view and word wrap. So you can just simply copy and paste this particular text file code, because this will be added as a resources section for the lecture. So you can actually copy it from here, because if I try to explain this thing, it will take a lot of time and it is actually complicated as well. So now we have completed all of the three functions. It's coming back to the condition checking process. So the username validation is actually working fine. If we leave the username, then we get the username cannot be empty. If I refresh it and if I enter the username, then you can see the condition is actually changed to green, means the color of this particular input type is changes to green. So it means that the user value is properly entered and it is perfectly accepted by this particular input type. Now similarly, we need to add the conditions for the rest of the three input field as well, which is email, password and password check. So here again I need to type the if, and then we need to start the if block. So right now at this point of time we need to check for the email value. So if it is equals to empty one, then we want to call the set error for function, and then again we need to pass the first, which is the input, and then the message, which is email cannot be empty. Okay, and then in the else part, which is not else, first we need to check for the also else if, because it is actually a valid email or not. That is the reason we have created the is email function. So we need to pass here email. So if the email is not valid, then again we need to call here a set error for function, and here we need to pass the input, which is actually the email, and then the message, enter a valid email. Alright, and the else part, if this condition is not true, means if it is, then the else block will be executed. So here we need to call the set success for function, and inside of that we need to pass the input element. So what will actually this particular lines of the code does, first it will check if the email value is empty, then it's going to call this particular function by passing these two parameters. So again, we need to check for the valid email. This is for the empty email. If there is a empty input in this particular one, means if this field is empty, then this particular code will be executed. If it is not the case, then it will check for this particular condition, whether the email is valid or not. So that is the reason we have created the isEmail function. If it is also not executed, then the else block will be executed, means the email is valid and also the email is not empty. Alright. Similarly, we need to check for the condition for the password as well. So here we need to use the password value, password check, not password check. First we need to check for the password value. So if it is equals to empty one, then we need to simply call these two code here. So I'm going to copy it and I will be just pasting it here. Alright. So here we need to pass the password value. And then the input type here again, we need to pass the password, not password value. We need to pass the password input. And there we need to simply use password cannot be empty. Okay. So if I click on submit, now you can see 3 message is actually visible to the input field. Now we need to apply the same code for the 4th input field. So I'm going to copy it here. So we need to apply the else, and also we need here else if block. Okay. Also we need here else if block. Add this one, and inside of the else if we need to check for the condition. So we need to check here for password value. If it is not equal to password check value, if both the input field value is not same, then we want to again call the set error for function. Here we need to pass the password check, and also here we need to also pass the password check and password check cannot be empty. Alright, we need to pass the password check, and also here we need to display the message password does not match. Okay, so password does not match. If I control save it and if I enter, means click on submit, now you can see we get the else block, which is actually password check cannot be empty, password cannot be empty, email cannot be empty, username cannot be empty. Now if I refresh it and if I enter the username, also the email, and if I enter here some password like random one, and if I enter different password in the password check, then you can see email, enter a valid email, so it's going to give us error in the email portion, and also password does not match. So there is a problem. It's actually providing us here, so we need to check for it why it's actually giving us this kind of error. So password value, so we have here passed the password check and we check for that. Again I'm going to refresh it. Now I'm going to add this code here, and I'm going to add 123 password, and then the password is also going to same. Then you can see whenever I click on the button, still it's going to give me the problem email cannot be empty. So why it's actually executing this again and again, email cannot be empty. So here it is actually perfect. Password success, password check, password does not match. Maybe I have done something wrong with the password check input field, so I need to check it here. So it's actually a control form, password check, ID is also password check, input type is password, placeholder is password check. So why it's behaving little weird? So I need to check for the IDs as well. I have specified the perfect IDs, password check, password check. Here I have also added the password check value dot value, and I have actually checked for the password. So here is the problem. I am actually checking here password value. So I need to check for the value for the password check value, means the variable that I need to use here is the password check value. So here again I need to use the password check value. If I control save it, and now if I leave the email, means if I enter the correct passwords, click on submit, and still we are getting this enter a valid email. So if I project is working fine, but there is a problem in the password check field. So this is a problem. Here I am actually passing the password here I need to pass the password check value variable, means the password check variable we need to pass it as a parameter. Now again I'm going to run it, and if I enter here password which is correct one, and if I click on submit, then still I am actually facing this particular issue. Now the problem with this particular one, whenever I enter all of the values in this particular fields properly, then we are getting this message enter a valid email. The reason for that, because in the else if condition, here you can see I am checking for the is email function, means passing the email as an argument to this particular is email function. But actually I need to pass the value of the email value variable. So here I need to pass the email value. Alright, now if I refresh it and if I run the code again, means try to enter the values, and like I enter the same password, click on submit, then you can see password does not match because I have entered here a wrong password. If I again refresh it, if I enter values, and if I enter here my password, I'm going to enter the same password. If I click on submit, now you can see the project is working fine. Everything is actually set up green. So it means that the code is working fine. So yeah, that's it for this particular project, which is the form validation project. I know that I made some typos while typing the code of the JavaScript, but actually it is a part of the learning. You will learn how to solve the errors also. So in this particular part, I faced some small typo errors. So you learn how the errors will be solved. So yeah, that's it for this particular part of the project. If you like this project, then leave your review, because your review motivates me to create more awesome projects like this one. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.